Buckle up, my beauties. We have a lot to discuss today. So 2 days before Christmas, Taylor gave us early Christmas presents in the form of episodes 5 and 6. I have taken a little bit extra time to think about and process these episodes, so that I can have time to spend with my family and pets and stuff like that for the holidays, and get a little bit of a break because I had to push out those original videos a little bit fast, but it also gave me more time to digest it. So I think I'm going to have probably 3 more videos about the series. I'm going to do this, the episode 5 breakdown. The next video will be the episode 6 breakdown, and then after that I want to discuss a lot of the themes that we saw throughout the entirety of it, to kind of give people a better idea of like what Taylor's priorities were, right? Because she is working in a time when she has maximum eyes on her. She's had more attention on her recently than she has in a while, and honestly probably ever in her career. So the values, the themes, the things that are expressed in this are the things that are most important, and I think it's very interesting to discuss those things. I know a lot of fans were a little bit disappointed that a lot more of the logistical stuff didn't happen. She wasn't getting into her mindset of why she was mashing up songs so much as she just was putting them together and just showing off her incredible ability to do that. Like, especially that 3-song mashup she did in episode 6. So I think this has been a really interesting series for a lot of reasons. Like I said, lots of stuff to discuss. Let's dive into episode 5, Marjorie. I knew that this episode was going to get me, right? And if you follow me on The Place Where the Sky is Blue, you know that one of the things that I discuss all the time is the fact that I feel that, like, yes, Marjorie gets a decent amount of attention related to Taylor Swift and her career and her life and things like that, but I still think as fans, we do not factor Marjorie into the equation enough. Marjorie is a really interesting, really, like, just a fascinating character, and the more I learned about her, the more interested I was, or rather, the more interested I get. And this episode was really exciting to me because I loved being able to see extra pictures of her, getting to learn more stories. I have done some searching on the internet to find, like, news stories from when she used to perform all over the world, so just getting to have insights from my Marjorie database was big, but also, I knew the second I saw the title of this that it was going to make me cry, and it did. Oh boy, howdy did it did. That's not how the sentences work. Oh well. I will be reading off of this a little bit. I will try to keep it interesting though. But I just want to make sure that this doesn't take forever because I ramble and get off the point. So one thing that I remind people of constantly is that Marjorie lived with the Swifts, I believe, from the time Taylor was born up until when she passed away in 2003. And as they discussed in this documentary, that was right around the time that Taylor was getting the inklings that in order to have the career that she wanted, that she was going to need to go to Nashville. That was when Taylor really started talking to her family about Nashville and how she felt that she needed to move there in order to have the best chances of a career. And I believe she said that she was on a visit to Nashville when Marjorie passed away. So that's got to be something that's very hard for her, for like kind of seeing her grandma not be around to see this. But also on some level, a big central theme of this is that Taylor believes, like, she doesn't really get into religion or religious beliefs, but more this concept that wherever Marjorie is, whatever state of being she's in, that she is aware of what's going on. But I think it's so interesting for storytelling perspectives that, like, this one, like, multi-talented singer who probably had a lot of other skills too because she could reinvent herself over and over again every time her husband moved for work, as she dies, Taylor picks up that torch and, like, just carries this, and when you see her singing Marjorie at the Eras Tour and all of these people with their lights out, sobbing along, talking about their own family that they miss, things of that nature, it just, one of the things that I stress a lot is that one of the things that I really respect about Taylor is that she's very often connecting herself to old figures of the past, and a lot of times these figures are people like Rebecca Harkness, who wouldn't necessarily have gotten the same level of remembrance if Taylor wouldn't have shed a light on it. And it really is Taylor being this bridge between the women in the past who broke a lot of the ceilings that allowed her to achieve to the degree that she's achieving now, but then also to connect those people to the current generation of fans so that people like Elizabeth Taylor aren't forgotten. And I love that. I love how much she homages and references these old figures. But just going back to Marjorie and her impact on Taylor, especially when she was was little. I really suspect that Marjorie and her own knowledge about music and arts and entertainment really made her like very fond of a lot of the old Hollywood actresses and actors, and I think in a lot of ways she is probably the one who inspired Taylor to watch, I envision them watching like old Elizabeth Taylor movies together when she was young, and her telling her all of the stories. And they also mentioned that Andrea kind of grew up moving around with Marjorie, like, and got to be front row. And there was some weird kind of parentification going on that we're going to discuss later. But like, Marjorie has always Andrea grew up at the side of the stage watching these performances. She's gotten to have a lot of really good insights on what it takes for someone to perform at high levels. And it's very interesting, and I'm very interested to discuss that later in this episode. Also, with The Life of a Showgirl, we have the connection to Marjorie in that the showgirl is named Kitty Finley. Finley is Andrea's maiden name. It is Marjorie's married name. And I loved that little honoring. So we start this off by seeing a lot of old scenes of Marjorie, often with Taylor, and one of them is with Taylor playing on the piano, loving those high notes, and Marjorie says, "You know what that means? You're gonna have to get a piano." And that was one of the, the piano, the guitar, that was part of the start of an obsession for Taylor. Like I mentioned, Marjorie's husband had a job that moved him around a lot, and she was literally like going all over the world. I've seen reports of her performing in Puerto Rico, Cuba, Singapore, a number of other countries, and it's fascinating to me that like every time he moved for his career, she just found a production and was singing in it, or like had a show. It's fascinating to me that she was just able, every time they moved to a new country, she found a production, she found a show, she settled back into what she loved doing, and that fascinates me. And like very often it's hard for women to find success when they have a spouse that moves them around a lot, because it's hard to get started over. And I think that she probably had a lot of challenges, and I believe that like need to continually reinvent herself for the place and the scenario and the demands is a skill that she very likely passed on to Taylor, if not directly then via Andrea. Cut to today, and we see Taylor rehearsing, and she is not necessarily feeling so well. She's a little bit sick. They are talking about Thanksgiving, and Andrea wants to spatchcock a turkey. That is so funny to me, because when you spatchcock a turkey, you are literally ripping the spine out. We are also making this connection. I don't remember who it was that picked it out, but Taylor mentions the fact that they screwed up the turkey when they were deep frying it, and it was like inedible, and that was actually something that was in the Lover Diary. So that was a really interesting callback, especially when you're connecting this concept of like having your spine teared out, and also the events of the Lover era when she lost her master's rights and she had to change a lot of her plans. And a lot of people believe that that is when her spine got ripped out with regards to things like advocating politically. It didn't really go so hot for her. The candidates that she was advocating for didn't necessarily win. And I know a lot of people want her to talk out more, but the simple fact of the matter is that the math doesn't math well that way. It's really questionable whether a figure as large as Taylor speaking out is ultimately beneficial or detrimental, because the people that would have voted for that candidate already probably were, but other people who don't like Taylor will vote against Taylor's candidate just to spite her. And then that kind of like spite reaction, that response from haters, like when you just mostly have people that like you, advocating works differently than when there are people who hate you and everything you stand for and will attack that cause if you stand for it very vocally. And I think that's one of the big reasons why a lot of her like donations and charitable actions have been things that were more quiet, more private, to make it harder for that kind of like response, that lash out response. Because Travis isn't here through most of this, they have to give the Trav wives a little bit of something to feed on. So Taylor mentions him coming to Thanksgiving and Andrea making Texas-sized ribs for a Texas-sized man, those ones he calls dinosaur bones. Something that is very interesting to me is we're making the connection to the Lover Diary and when the turkey was obliterated by Andrea's attempt at cooking. And no shade on Andrea, she just doesn't strike me as the cooking type. I fully believe that Taylor cooks and Taylor bakes and things like that, but Andrea just does not give me that vibe. She seems more of like a career mom. And right before the show came out, Good Morning America released this clip of them all like working on one of the first, like I think it was 2004, one of the first TV specials that was focusing on Taylor and her atmospheric rise that was about to happen. Taylor really foreshadowed so much of her career, but that's another story entirely. Regardless, the clip is Andrea trying to pretend like she can make box mac and cheese and failing miserably at it. Like she didn't turn the oven on or something like that, or she didn't put water on it. I don't know. The way Taylor and Austin and Scott were laughing at that situation really gave the vibe that like Andrea was not usually the one who cooked, and she was trying to present them as like the average modern American family by pretending to cook her family food, but then it just revealed that she probably doesn't cook that much. Like they were very wealthy even before Taylor came along. So then Taylor starts talking about her family and the Torrens. This is really interesting to me because there are a number of red flags that have been coming out. Like one of the big ones is when it's either later in this episode or the next episode, where she says that the reason that her relationship with Travis works is because she's very dedicated to her career and he's very dedicated to his career. Well, he's about to retire from his career, so that is like a massive red flag. But the other kind of big red flag is like Taylor talking about how her family comes together for touring. It is very highly romanticized, but I don't want people to infer that I think all of the Swifts are bad people. I just think that, especially after seeing the Scott Swift leaked emails and him whacking the photographer that got too close to Taylor in the face, I just get the vibe that it hasn't always been like this. Like, I really hope that they are not just fronting with this aspect for the camera, although every time Scott Swift is on camera, I was so confused as to why he wasn't on camera, but then every time he was on camera, he was saying something super awkward in a way that made me feel like they had never spoken to each other before. It was very weird. Anyway, Taylor on her family. She talks about how touring brings the family together. Part of the Eras Tour is a celebration of my family. I don't see any of this happening without my family. This has been a family business for 20 years. When they got into this, her parents didn't know anything about it, but they read a lot to try and do the best job that they possibly could. You know, they show her mom drawing the 13 on her hand every night when she was getting started out, and she talks about how everyone banded together. She wants this, we want this for her. Andrea talks about what an honor and a privilege it is to be a part of this, which I really do feel like Andrea respects that she's part of something big. Although I do admit this episode leaves me with the feeling that it's like, Andrea, you need to do something for yourself. It's like your entire life has been to serve these women in your life, first your mother, then your child, who are performers and who need your guidance and your moral support and things of that nature. What have you done for yourself, ma'am? Like, but also just like, it really feels like the Eras Tour was the end of a certain part of touring in Taylor's life. And I do wonder, like, how is it with them as a family without these pressures? I can't imagine. I love my parents. We get along great. I live with them right now. I moved back in with them because I like living with them more than I like living with other people. And the thing is, I can't imagine them being an intimate part of the family business for so many years, and an intimate part of like the work, the songs are very diaristic. I can't imagine that. And I also just wonder how weird it has been for Austin that like so much was made about Taylor. Like before he could even decide on what his dreams were, Taylor's dream procession was in play. And I'm very interested what the real family dynamics are here. Also, there's the whole thing about how it was widely reported that the Swifts got separated, I think like 2011 or 2013. But more recently, they've been kind of acting like they're together, sort of. I don't know. I just wonder a lot about the logistics and how the family works. How does that family operate? And next we have Gracie coming in. Gracie and Taylor were changing up the song Us since they just got Grammy nominated for it. They had went out to celebrate. They had a lot of drinks. There was the fire. They showed that whole fire and Taylor extinguishing it, and I was thinking about how their shoes and their bags got damaged. I was also connecting this to Karma is the Fire in Your House. So much of the Midnight's era has been foreshadowing, forewarning of sorts about the eras that we're currently in. So that was interesting to me. They end up mashing up Us with Out of the Woods. And I would love to be on the list of people that Taylor Swift sends random voice messages to, because could you imagine? And she's just, seeing how her brain works at these things was very fascinating for me. Another element of this that was absolutely planned is the fact that when Gracie receives that voice note, she has a camera crew with her, so her and her manager can react to it. I thought that was interesting. It's fascinating to me when they bring attention to the fact that this is a docuseries and that they're aware the cameras are there. Like when Scott was like, and Dad and Brother are in the back. It was like reassuring the audience that he's there. But just more broadly, it makes me think about what there were camera crews around for. A lot of people have complained that this is only about the end of the Eras Tour. It's not about the Eras Tour as a whole. And they're like wishing that there was footage, but we have footage. We see footage earlier in the Eras Tour, especially when they're first practicing it. Like, we have a lot of practice footage. That footage just is only sporadically being used in this. This makes me think that this is just the first docuseries and that there's going to be other material that comes out as a tribute to Eras Tour. And like, realistically, if she has the material, if she has the willpower, I say go for it. Fans are always interested in more information. I think that there were very specific goals that were trying to happen here and that she has made them happen. I do think showing the whole family dynamic, presenting themselves as like a happy, healthy nuclear family that is very tied to selling Taylor as like the pop star that didn't burn out. Like, so many people around her had really public, really obvious mental health issues and substance issues, and Taylor is very often presented as the one who made it, and her parents and her family are presented as the reason she made it. Although with TTPD, we also get insights to the fact that, like, just because it all looked wholesome on the surface doesn't mean that there weren't negative things going on. And I always think about the lyric, blood's thick but nothing's like a payroll, and I know people want to make that about the Kardashians, but I just suspected in the past that there has been friction and that maybe they have worked through it, but that there probably was friction at some juncture or multiple junctures. I think also about when she is really wanting to make a stand in Miss Americana, and, you know, Scott is one of the people talking her out of that. But back to Gracie and Taylor, something that was really interesting to me about that scene was the fact that they're both wearing horizontal striped shirts, and I don't have theories about that, but I know several other performance artlers do, and it's so interesting to me that Gracie in particular was wearing like white and black prison stripes. And especially because of the fact that we knew that the camera knew to be there, it does make me wonder if she was told to put on that shirt to Easter egg for the moment. We also see Andrea bopping out to it in the background, and I love how much she loves Taylor's work. I love how much she gets into it, because so many artists don't get that with and from their parents. But as we're watching Gracie and her manager listen to this voice note, they are both amazed at how Taylor can put these songs together and how she's a mastermind. And again, if there is one primary message about the surprise song mashups, it is that Taylor put a lot of work and thought into them, into planning them, and that we as fans really need to dive into those more. I wish I had infinite time and editing help so that I could make videos on everything that I want to make videos about, but I do want to make videos about some of those surprise song mashups. I do suspect that at some point in time in the near future, Taylor is going to release surprise songs and surprise song mashups, and I believe that is why we are getting so much framework of these surprise song mashups are important. Let's look at them more. After that scene, we see Taylor mixing Evermore with Peter, and Andrea says that she doesn't understand how Taylor does it. And I think we're kind of in that circumstance that I've mentioned a couple times, where people that are incredibly good at things often make them look very easy. It is not easy to do what Taylor is doing. Like, the way she constructs these songs together, and the fact that, like, she was doing it pretty quickly too, and like, I don't think she had all of these mashups planned before the Eras Tour, so like, I don't think she had a tremendous amount of time to work on them. It really just seems like her brain mashes things together on some interesting level, but I think a lot of these are telling stories, and especially Evermore and Peter. Andrea discusses how she doesn't have a creative bone in her body, but she does have the intimate understanding of the psyche of someone who does and who has to do it. And I wish I I wonder how much she's tried. So many people think they're not creative, and creativity is not like something that you're born with so much as it's a muscle that you have to exercise. And a lot of us stop exercising it while we are children, and that makes it harder for us to make art and to create things that we like. But this connects us back to Marjorie again. I really like the way different narratives are weaved through these episodes. So you have a point that is made, and then you have time to digest it. And then you have a point that is supported, and then you have time to digest it. So they explain how she was an opera singer who went to college for music, then married her husband and started moving around the world. And wherever they were living, she would star in operas, and everywhere they went, she was beloved. Andrea mentioned how she and her sister were brought along with them and were put in the front row. And on the way home, she'd say, "So, Andrea, did that part of the delivery make you want to cry?" And Andrea would say, "Well, Mom, a little bit. I'm paraphrasing a lot of things in this because it's a pain in the butt to just dictate every word everyone says. So just understand, paraphrasing is happening throughout this. Marjorie was always looking for feedback, but from an 8-year-old. So Andrea would do what she could, and she knew that she needed to pay attention because there was a job to do. She was going to be quizzed on the way home. She says that she had a beautiful relationship with her mom. And I do think that your kids can be an important insight, like especially if the music that you are creating is for people, like for families, for a large group of people, making sure that it is appealing to people of a younger age is good. But I also do wonder, like, I said parentified at the top. That's not necessarily what I mean, but it really is kind of one of those, like, dictating an adult role to a child before that child may fully be ready. And like, how did she react when Andrea gave bad feedback? I'm like, there are sometimes people describe things and they're like trying to romanticize them, but I'm also like, whilst there are parts of that would be good, there are also parts of that I would really hate, and I hope she didn't hate them. Andrea had the full awareness that her mother loved singing, loved to perform, and that the people loved her. So it prepared Andrea better than anything could for having a child like Taylor who wanted to follow in Marjorie's footsteps. Taylor always knew she wanted to perform. She was writing music without co-writers as a child. At 11, she asked to go to Nashville. Taylor wanted to experience something that she thought was destiny. That is connecting us back to that episode 3, I believe, that was called Kismet, that was about Taylor's like skyrocket to fame, how her early career went, things of that nature. We're connecting this back to that theme. There are a lot of themes that are really supported again and again throughout this documentary, and one of them is that Taylor was destined to be an entertainer, and that what she is living through right now is that destiny manifested in real life. Then I believe it was Andrea who said that at a very young age we tend to know where we're going in life, and it's good to listen to them and where their dreams are even at a young age. This is also continuing that theme that many, if not all, of the people that are working with the Eras Tour are people who were like Taylor. I talk a lot about how these episodes are doing a couple of things. A, Taylor is recognizing skill in other people that are skills that she has as well, because that is a way of like boasting about yourself without it coming off as boasting, because women get very heavily criticized when they boast. So a lot of times you're seeing these dancers being praised. And yes, I think that it's not ingenuine because Taylor's doing that. Like, I think that's one of the problems that some people are having, that because there's a narrative, because there's a story that they're trying to tell, because there's a point that they're trying to make, they're thinking that cheapens everything. But I don't believe that, because it's not Taylor like pushing these people down to make herself come up. It is Taylor propping these people up to be closer to her equal, and it really seems like she views a lot of these people as something of equals. And then we go talk to Amanda Balen. And Amanda Balen is interesting to me because she is the dancer that, like, on the surface, I think most resembles Taylor, especially Taylor at a specific, like, point in her life when she had short hair. Amanda was kind of asked to come out of retirement to dance for Eras Tour, and that's a really big ask. And I do wonder, Amanda did make it seem like this was something that, like, the group wanted from her, but I do wonder how much Taylor wanting her to come out of retirement is part of it. And I do think at a lot of points on stage that dancers are representing facets of Taylor or facets of Taylor's past life, inner child, things of that nature. And I do think that Amanda is one of the dancers doing that. But anyway, we see Amanda and she is surrounded by trinkets kits and tchotchkes devoted to dance. And it is clear that dance has been like the most important thing to her all her life. She is a true dance nerd. And she mentioned that you have to have a certain personality to tour. It's one thing to be a dancer or a musician. It's another thing to be able to devote your life to touring. But Amanda loves it and she thrives in that environment, and her life dream was to tour. And it has to be very hard for her to go from touring like this to being in retirement. And I really do hope that she is going to do like other choreography and other jobs like that still allow her to tour a little bit without maybe having the same physical demands as dance. She was mentioning that it is very bittersweet because after this tour, her dance career is over. And I do think that this tour was bittersweet in a lot of ways for Taylor too, because I think it probably represented the most Taylor could push out of herself at a time when she was really at like her physical peak, and she's very strong and she's worked out and she's really prepared for it. I think in a lot of ways this was the most like physically ambitious tour that we will see out of Taylor. I very much expect in the future with tours that she will continue to use dancers, but also lighting, other stage elements, visuals, things of that nature, continue to tell a really complex story, but also to get her out of doing a lot of like when she was falling to her knees and coming up from her knees during Reputation set every night, I was just like, my poor knees. Her poor knees. And just in general, a lot of this episode focuses on the importance and value of family, but especially mothers, to accepting and helping their kids along their journey. I think so very often, so much success, even Taylor's success, a lot of Taylor's success is very often broken down to just what Scott has done for her. But I think in a lot of ways, what has made her truly successful is it's a combination of a lot of people and a lot of factors, but I think a lot more of it is and was Andrea than people realize. And I think a lot of these episodes was talking about honoring mothers for the sacrifices that they made and honoring mothers for the way they have allowed their children to succeed at their dreams in the ways that wouldn't be capable otherwise. Then we go see a huddle, and I love seeing that it's not just Taylor that says something to hype people up every night. She really does seem to give other people an opportunity to like say something in advance, that like really profound moment. And Amanda says, this is potentially the last time I'll ever do this in front of my family and friends. They talk about how rare opportunities like this are. Tay, you are all things kindness and grace, and my life is different because of you. A lot of us have theories that relate around Taylor and religion, and that, oh God, I'm just like, interesting, suspicious. They do the up, F it up. I love that. And then they cut to Amanda's family reacting in the audience. I love how much you see the families in the audience finally seeing their children realizing these goals that they have had their entire life. That has to be such a huge moment for those families. We then have Andrea talking, and she says for Taylor, it's always been about the audience, making sure she felt an intimate connection with them. With the Eras tour, that could no longer be possible because of COVID. You have this massive production. Having it shut down would be a disaster. And Taylor said, if I can't meet fans, then I need to have to come up with different ways to still give people an intimate experience. We are then introduced to Ethan Taubman, who is the production designer. He has also worked with her on the Midnight's music videos. Again, a lot of us are connecting that to the plan that is in motion right now. He says he loves working with a storyteller. Another big theme is how many of these people are storytellers more than they are pop stars or dancers or musicians. Taylor, this was really validating for me to see how much focus was on storytelling, because I have been just nagging people about storytelling and how Taylor's a storyteller and how important that is, and storytellers in general are so important for the world. And that was a huge theme of a lot of these episodes, but we have so many other people that are acknowledging Taylor as the storyteller, including Ethan. Ethan talks about a storyteller's relationship with their fans and our relationship with the songs. If every idea you have creates an emotional response, you're able to make people in the back row feel like they're in the front row. And Taylor wanted that production to be accessible to everyone, so they made the floor bigger, made a lot of visuals for the floor, and then had aerial cameras so fans on the floors didn't miss what was happening on the floor. And I honestly think that End of an Era was less about how the production was made and more Taylor pointing out the parts of Era's tour and the people that are involved and the things, so that when we watch the final show as it's been released, we are making more connections. We're interpreting it on a different level. We are realizing things that we couldn't realize when we were just watching it on a grainy live stream. Especially the visuals, the floor, the dance choreo, the surprise song mashups, the costumes. These are the things that we are continually coming back to over and over again. These are the things that are really important for Taylor. These are important mechanisms of her storytelling and things that just broadly in general we need to pay attention more. I have wanted to do videos on Era's tour, but it is just so daunting. It was so hard to just go through these videos. It took me like 10 hours to go through episode 6 just because I stop so often and have thoughts and I need to jot them down, and like critically watching this stuff takes forever, and she has so much content, and then editing this stuff takes even more time. I'm like, Taylor! But I think that's a big point. I say very often that this is the world's largest group project, and the big reason for that is because it is impossible for one person to do it. And one of the reasons that I make videos on so many different platforms is because I want more people to join the team, you know? Taylor also talks about having a cinematographer for her tour for the first time, which again is just another thing that tells me, like, yes, the visuals are very important, a huge part of the storytelling, and she wants to make sure that she's conveying what she wants to be conveying. She also talks about kind of wild card stuff that was thrown in, like her diving into the floor, which was one of Ethan's ideas, and I just love that. Very reminiscent of something else that we discussed. We discussed that she goes from this cover to this cover and then sings a Lavender Haze. But initially when Taylor has talked about diving in the stage, she says that's not going to work. How's it even work? And you see people reacting to the leap, that surprise creating joy. That's what great shows do, make adults feel like children. I think that's so important. I think very often when we hit our teenage years, we are encouraged to give up so many parts of our childhood in order to be mature adults. And a lot of that goes into being appropriate for a relationship, right? So like when I was a kid, I gave up like pretty roughly dresses. I gave up stuffed animals, things of that nature, because I was told that if I was acting and looking like a little kid, and if I liked stuffed animals like a little kid, that I wasn't going to attract a good partner. But the thing is, stuffed animals provide comfort to adults too. Bedtime stories provide comfort from adults too. And very often an integral part of healing your damaged inner child, if you are someone with trauma, is by taking care of that inner child, doing the things that you used to do as a child to calm down, whatever that may be, whether that be running around in circles in the backyard, whether that be bedtime stories. Those things can be really healing and can really ground you back in your humanity when you're kind of spiraling. They wanted to make it the biggest thing they had ever done, but none of it happens without a song and someone there to sing it. Like, yes, there are so many people around Taylor that are doing this incredible work, but also without Taylor, they don't come together. And so much of this has been bringing attention to all of the hidden unsung heroes of touring, and it just really demonstrated how somebody that is as big as Taylor keeps a lot of artists employed. She keeps them on payroll. She keeps them comfortable. This myth that starving artists is a myth that is created by the system. Artists wouldn't have to starve if the system actually paid artists fairly. We cut to a clip of Taylor in 2017. She's throwing chairs around and screaming that she loves songs in front of Shellback. Taylor says, storytelling for me is one of the key aspects that makes me feel like life is worth living. I think that's so very important. Actually, I don't want to fully derail this, but I have done a video on storytelling and all of its importance that I will link at the end of this video in case you're curious. We then see a debut songwriting session, a fearless songwriting session, some speak now sessions, reputation. Taylor says, crafting a song is just the happiest I ever am. If you're in a writing session with me, like I'll go into my lyric space and it's just sort of like rocking back and forth in the corner muttering. I do the same thing when I'm writing. Taylor says, I never lost that sense of just, it's endlessly fascinating. I never get bored of it. Songwriting happens whether I'm on tour or not, because my life has just been a free-flowing state of you live it, you feel it, you wonder about it, you write about it. Again, I am so curious how many songs we never get to hear because they are just songs that she wrote to get a thought out of her head and into the world where it can hurt her less. She talks about how she started going to Sweden between shows and it felt like the most exciting way to make a secret album. And I have to. When I'm done with this, I will be doing a video about why I believe believe The Life of a Showgirl, a lot of the writing aspects of it took place in the past. I am willing to believe that she recorded it recently. I am not willing to believe that the large majority of it was written recently, but we're going to discuss that in a different video. Taylor talks about how it would just be the three of us and we would write and record. And I don't remember the context if she was dancing or singing in a specific way, but Taylor said, I can be more violent, trust me, and that is humorous given so much of this parallel between her job and Travis's job has been, his job is violent, my job is in heels, but we largely do the same thing. Taylor has been wearing a lot of USA gear throughout this. It's clear that this is most likely intended to look like, whether it is or not, I'm questionable, but it's intended to look like it is during the time of the Summer Olympics when women's rugby was very popular, especially with the Ting girls. But also just the flagging of it all when we had that parallax where from one side it says love wins, from the other side it's an American flag. Taylor says, I was in a place in my life where life felt so full of possibility and it felt like I was figuring things out and it felt so romantic and magical and passionate and I wanted to capture that. Taylor talks about how she hadn't made any music together with Max Martin and Shellback since Rep. I am so curious. One of the big reasons why I think that a lot of Life of Showgirl stuff is older is because Max Martin really demands credit on work that he doesn't do, and Taylor is usually against that, and that's why this whole album was a real big surprise for me. Taylor then talks about how Max and Shellback, they have always felt like masters, and she was their apprentice in the past, but now it's a respectful relationship with people who you know are your peers, but you also look up to them. We have the Swedish Christmas dinner, or the first station of it, and this tickled my pickle, y'all, because what do you mean you put raisins in wine? And I know a lot of people are going to be like, okay, that's a Swedish tradition, but why is this happening during a songwriting session for The Life of a Showgirl when during a songwriting session for Midnights, she was eating raisins with wine with Antonov? Like, why is it the raisins and wine keep coming back? It means something, I swear. Taylor felt ready for the challenge of going back to them and stretching and making the best album she could make. Andrea talks about how she usually hears about music within 5 minutes of Taylor making it. It is the best thing, but also the scariest, because she has that responsibility to protect that secret. And yeah, I don't necessarily know that I would want that responsibility either. I would not be talking to anybody if I had, like, intimate knowledge of Taylor's secrets. She does the line about, I'm immortal, baby dolls. You couldn't erase me if you tried, or whatever it is. And she mentions how she's talking to all of those girls, just keeping in mind for other times when she's used baby doll in the past. Taylor says, I love being hyper detailed and having several overarching themes that are woven throughout, and I think the fans have really gotten into that obsessive nature of my storytelling too. Yes, my whole channel is just about how Taylor is hyper detailed and how she has several overarching themes that are woven through all of her work, including this. That is why there's going to be a full episode of themes that were in this. But these two episodes, I know a lot of people were put off by these two episodes, but these two episodes were just like, hey, Aaron, those weird ideas that you have about Taylor being a storyteller more than a pop star, and about how she has a lot of overarching narratives and themes and all of that jazz. It's just all, this feels hand created to be delivered to me, to be like, hey Aaron, you know that theory that you had that seemed like really crazy and off the wall? You're totally right. And I'm like, yes. But also I'm very aware of the fact that this is a person who admits to lying to her audience often, and admitted on an interview before this to being an unreliable narrator, so, which is another thing that I've done a video on. I've done videos about how there's a lot of layers and overarching themes and things of that nature. I've done a video about how she is a storyteller. It's phenomenal. I had to put shoes on at some point, so I apologize if my footsteps bother you, but it is 56 degrees in here and dropping rapidly, and I like being connected to my toes. We then have a talking head with Amos, and he says, I think for a lot of people, they feel such a personal connection to her deeply personal writing, the drama she's been through, the heartbreak and regret she shared with people, and I think it must be meaningful for her for that to resonate. One of my big overarching themes is that this is all about seeing and being seen, and how the people that try to look at the songs the deepest are the people that are trying to see Taylor. We see a ton of people, especially young people, doing covers. Amos says a lot of people who can relate to this. Her writing is personal, vulnerable, very specific, in that specificity people see themselves. And it's so interesting. I talk a lot about how Taylor's writing seems very specific, but a lot of things that she says are phrases that can be taken many ways. Like Robin and long may you roar at your dinosaurs. I have proposed that that could be about Batman. And this is about a number of Robins, but I've proposed that it could be a reference to Batman's Robin, who has fought against dinosaurs and kind of yarred them a couple of times. It could be Taylor in the Miss Americana, where she is roaring that she wants to speak out publicly, politically, regardless of what these old men dinosaurs say. We've also talked about Robin Williams and how he plays with dinosaurs on the Miss Doubtfire movie, I believe. There are a number of ways that those things can be interpreted, and it simultaneously feels very specific, as though it can only refer to one thing for Taylor's life or what have you, but it also is very kind of like that fake psychic horoscope thing, where it is written in a way that can be interpreted a number of ways. She is so good. The more simple Taylor's writing seems, the more interpretations and the more layers that it has, and it is simplified so that it can feel specific to a number of things while not actually being... It's so fascinating. Then Gracie says, I don't remember a time not listening to her music. Every chapter of my life is marked by an album of hers that came out the same time. Gracie started writing at 8. A friend asked her if she would rather have $10 trillion or to write a song with Taylor, and she said Taylor. Again, this theme of children having their dreams come true. It's all the Peter Pan of it all. Everything is coming together, and I love when that happens. Taylor says the double bridge on the mashup they're doing is going to send her off a cliff. Taylor, stop threatening to jump off of tall somethings. It's becoming a problem. Gracie says that Taylor is the easiest person to be around, and it's like a dream. They both practice together. You see Gracie nervous before she pops out on stage. Taylor says there's something that happens between friends that make music. It's this undeniable bond you have. With Gracie, we have had so many special moments, and I just think about, I have proposed a couple of times now in my discussion of this, how I just want a series where Taylor interviews her friends, or not interviews her friends, she like talks to her friends, makes, song mashups with her friends, and they just kind of shoot the shit and play together. I think it would be so good. The camaraderie and the charisma that have existed in all of those little scenes where she has done a little mashup with one of her friends, whether it be Ed, whether it be Sabrina, whether it be Gracie, all of those scenes have been really great to me. Taylor says, my opening acts on this tour are kids that were 10 years old at my show. Now that we're singing together, I can't believe the way that everything is falling into place in a way you never dreamed it would. I know that one of the criticisms that a number of people had was that Taylor didn't discuss her other opening acts more, and I do think that the things that she focused on were very specific to make the points that she wanted to make, and I think the points that she wanted to make are so very important to her. That's why I want to do a whole video about them. Then to wrap up this little segment, we have Andrea saying, I look forward to seeing the different ways fans react from night to night. For me personally, watching the shows, that moment that Taylor appears and there she is, that to me is absolutely worth everything. It makes me feel like this was my calling in life. Whether it was Taylor or my mom, it was to be around someone who loves entertaining and was extraordinarily talented. I was just ditto. It happened all over again. And I just, again, Marjorie, or Andrea, I'm sure that you have talents. I just want a show where Andrea finds her talents, because I'm sure you are incredible as a supporting act, but don't be a supporting act in your own life, my dear. We talk about Marjorie again, and Andrea starts crying talking about her. You see Taylor wearing a Superman onesie and Marjorie reading to her about kittens. Taylor talks about the experience writing Marjorie. She said she was a wreck at times. She kind of broke down at times writing it. She says that Marjorie died when she was 13 because the universe just always, in weird ways with Taylor, when Taylor was on a trip to Nashville to try and make it, so she always felt like Marjorie was seeing that. And it kind of wrecks her when Marjorie is singing with her in the song. I don't know how she sings that song every night without crying, because I just watching it want to cry half the time. Andrea said when Marjorie does it on tour, God, Taylor, I don't know if I can make it through the tour crying every night when you sing that song. It just gets me. It started out as something very simple. We didn't even have lights prepared for that show. We didn't know fans were going to honor that song with the reverence that they do. We didn't know they were going to put their phones up. It just became a very loving tribute. Mike Meadows' dad had passed away last year, and he said those of us that have gone through similar in recent years, that's always kind of an emotional moment in the night. Tamia talks about her papa, who was her favorite person, and he unfortunately passed, and she always feels his presence, especially during this song. Camila says that Marjorie is about Taylor's grandma, but it's personal to me. It is a testament to Taylor's writing because it really feels like your own experience. The idea that you have a loss and yet they're still here with us is what I need to cling to every night. And then you see everybody doing their makeup together, and I love that kind of like, you've had your emotional moment, then you gotta fix your face and go out on stage and put your you grin on. Camila says, performing with Taylor 10 years, Eras Tour was a surprise to us all. We had COVID, we all wanted to be together to make music again. I needed to be here to make music again. Like, such a big theme of this is how people that are creative need to have that creative outlet. It is an important function of their life, and if you suppress it, it makes people, like, there are so many people, I even include myself, I loved music when I was younger, but my parents really made it clear to me that that wasn't really practical and that I should probably focus my time on other things. So I stopped playing the cello when I was in high school, and just recently I started playing the guitar, and having that song, that musical outlet again, is something that I didn't realize I needed. And that's one of those reasons why I'm like so much heavily on the train. Andrea, please, we need to find, I'm sure you're not devoid of creativity. You just need to work on the skills. You just need to stretch those muscles. I'm sure you can be a sensation. You can be the center of your own life, at least for a while. I don't know. I know that a lot of people, here's the thing. This is why I'm reacting so strongly to this. For so long in my life, because I felt like I couldn't be with a woman, my goal in my life was kind of to be a man's muse of sorts. Like, because I thought that like being the muse, but also being the person that like supported the tortured artist was something that I could do that would make me important and relevant. And what I completely failed to realize is that I don't need to be the muse. I can be my own muse. I can be an artist myself. I don't have to be subservient to an artist. I can just be an artist. Camila said that she lost her mother in September of 2021. Not only did I need music and to be with my band family, I needed to heal. Music is the thing that is most healing to me. Another theme of this is just how important music, especially when you come together in community for music, is. And while all of these people were talking, I was just thinking about TTPD and how many fans, especially fans that had CPTSD and that had a lot of childhood issues and things of that nature, used that album as a form of catharsis, as a form of healing, as a form of like being able to take the next steps to be better and to be more whole as people. And I think that's so valuable, and I think that's why so much time is being spent on this. And I know a lot of people don't like that this is where the time is being spent, but it's so valuable. And then this is something that is so integral, so integral. Camila says, for the past few years, I've been really learning to accept and lean into that two different things can be true at one time. And last year, that really smacked me in the face because we started this tour and we were all making memories and falling in love with each other. And I was the happiest I had been in some time. And at the same time, I was heartbroken every moment because my mother wasn't here to experience this joy and to see the Eras Tour. If you saw me sobbing somewhere, you'd never know that I was the happiest I'd been for a while. And if you saw my joy, it was often that I was pretty devastated. And so knowing that, I just want to give permission to feel both, to be here, feel what we feel, be as present as you can in the next 4 shows. This message is so integral both to the documentary, but also to so much of Taylor's life. Like, I speak a lot about the fact that on the surface level, a lot of people think that Taylor is so lucky and that she hasn't suffered at all, but the industry is very difficult to be in. Having the media turn against you is very difficult. There are so many things, parts of her life, that are difficult to deal with. And I think in a lot of cases, Taylor is feeling 2 things at the same time. I think in a lot of cases, many of us are feeling 2 things at the same time. Like, so many of myself and the people around me are deconstructing. We're looking at media more. We're doing things that are to our own benefit, that help us to exist in this system and to help us like not be as hurt by the system and to start healing. And a lot of that has required being able to have the joy of things like pop music, music events, all of that jazz, to have joy and to experience joy and to be effusive in that joy, because we're also dealing with some of the sadness, the worst sadness and the worst fear that a lot of us have ever dealt with in our whole lives. And you are multitudes. Humans contain multitudes. Like, so much of this is about the way humans contain multitudes and how we very often feel like it just has to come down to one thing, but it's not. It can be two things at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time. Parallax, different perspectives, looking at things different ways. Taylor is in the berry dress, which I love, for Marjorie, and you hear Andrea say, my mom's voice is in that song, and she would have loved to have seen all this. She'd be so proud, and I think she'd also be really, really stoked that she's now singing in a stadium every night. Taylor is keeping the voices of people in the past alive, even through today and into the future. So much of this is her bridge to the past and how she functions as that. Taylor is crying on stage and she says it's not even the last show. Afterwards, she's in the car with Austin and Austin kind of comforts her. She says, I got emotional. I felt like a dumbass. And Austin said, that was the best part. Taylor said, I couldn't put words together, Austin. That was kind of embarrassing. It's nice of you to say, though, you're a very supportive person. And Austin again stresses that was the best part because, like, again, I think it goes back to, like, the Eras Tour. Like, Taylor executes so perfectly and it makes it look so easy every night that the reminders of her humanity are very charming. And I think this is another example of that. Taylor says Camila made this speech before the show where she was just talking about how her mom died recently, and she was just saying how heartbroken she was and that her mom never got to see the Eras Tour and never got to see her do this, and I was thinking about it all night. And I knew that. We used to always make eye contact on Marjorie because of her mom, but to put it in perspective that mom did get to see it, and Travis got to see it, and dad got to see it, and I felt so lucky, and it just cracked me. It cracked me wide open. You know, Taylor is recognizing how lucky she is to have her family. And like realistically, even as much as I suspect that the family is not necessarily as perfect as it is portrayed on the internet, on the TV show, whatever, Taylor does benefit from having parents that are present and seem to at least be trying to do the best. I think, like, a lot of times, especially for millennial kids, like, our parents were working off of, like, Dr. Spock books. We didn't have a lot of guidance. They didn't have a lot of guidance. Their parenting tactics were not always the most bestest, but, like, I think you can heal and you can recover from that, and I'm glad that she does have such a connection to her family still. I really hate this idea that you're supposed to get married and you're supposed to leave. Like, my parents aren't going to live forever. I like taking advantage of the time that I have with them while I have it. Taylor then gets on the phone with Scott and Andrea. Scott says, OMG, it was, and well, he doesn't say OMG, he says, oh my God, it was unreal, it was incredible. Andrea said it really was, and I think you have every right to feel emotional because it's got to be hitting you, honey, that this is the dream tour of your life. And Taylor said, I never thought we'd do anything this good. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, I'm going to have episodes on 6. I'm going to have episodes on themes. I also have an episode that I've almost finished editing that is on Elizabeth Taylor from the perspective that it is about fame. That will be coming out. Yeah, so if any of that is interesting to you, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. If this is the first video you've seen of me, I've done full videos for all of the other episodes that are up. Thank you very much for watching to the end. It really helps me out so very much, and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.